Yesterday, when I looked at your establishing the community assignment, where you were looking at the Mayflower's voyage, I only had 3 people turn it in correctly by this morning as of 8:30. So 3 out of 21 of you is not fantastic. So we're going to take some time to review today. Okay. Your directions asked you to answer the questions using evidence that you highlighted from the Mayflower. Yesterday, I only had 1 kiddo highlight evidence. I had to send it back to everybody else. You are also asked to type the answers using text evidence. And as you know from our Attack the Question unit, every answer in 3rd grade that you type about a text should be in complete sentences. And I only had 3 kids type in complete sentences yesterday. So you're getting ready to go into some breakout rooms where I'm going to show you a little bit of grace, and you're going to get some opportunities to go back in and highlight your text evidence and type your answers in complete sentences. Ms. Thaxton's students, I'd like for you to open up this assignment as well. So on Seesaw, when you go to activities, you're going to have to scroll down to find yesterday's activity of establishing the community. And you're going to click on your response and you're going to edit your response. Okay. A couple of you that I have sent it back to, you can be, sent that I've approved, you can be a leader for your group and help them find the answers. Not cheat and show them the answers, but help guide them. Help guide typing in complete sentences. Okay. We're going to spend about 5 minutes for you to make these corrections on highlighting your evidence on slide 3 and typing in a complete sentence. Highlighting your evidence on slide 4, typing in a complete sentence. Highlighting your evidence on 5, complete sentence. Same thing on 6. Same thing on 7. Highlighting, typing complete sentence. On 8 and 9, you were asked some reflection questions about the text as a whole. Okay? So you're going to get 5 minutes. You and your group are going to edit your response, and you are going to make sure that you have all highlighted evidence and that you have typed your answers in complete sentences. Okay? All right, here come your invites. Get ready to share your screens inside of your groups. Here you are. We are going to review our goal for the day, and we're going to take a look again at what context clues are. And then we will read the article from Scholastic News called "Could You Survive the Mayflower?" So if you were going to be aboard the ship, we know that half of the people died right during or after this journey. So the question is going to be, could you have survived the Mayflower? Okay. So let's take a look at what our goal is for today, and then we will get going. Our goal is to continue to build background information on the Pilgrims and why they came over to the Mayflower, and it is also to continue practicing our context clues. Our goals are?
As a reminder, today we are going to be continuing on with applying context clues and text features to determine the meanings of unknown words. We are going to be applying background knowledge and use surrounding words to determine the meaning of unknown words or phrases. A phrase is more than one word put together that has meaning to it when used.
So last week we looked at context clues specifically with individual words. This week we're going to start to look at some phrases and see if we can figure out what short parts of sentences that might be confusing mean as well. Okay. Remember our context clues. There are 5 types of clues that authors give us, and these are also true for phrases, not just words. When we're dealing with phrases that are unknown, we can use these 5 types of clues as well.
We have been talking about types of context clues. The main types of context clues are definition clues, where the word's meaning is explained in the sentence. Example clues, or an example of the word is given following the sentence or within the sentence. Inference clues. A word's definition is not explained. You need to look for clues before or after the sentences. Synonym clues. Other words are used in the sentence that have similar meaning. And antonym clues. The word is clarified by giving the opposite meaning, signaled by words whereas, unlike, as opposed to. The biggest ones that we have been using are inference clues and synonym clues. We will be continuing on where we might have definition clues and example clues in our nonfiction text today.
All right. Our nonfiction text is about the Mayflower and the Pilgrim's journey to the land that is now called America. Here is some more background information on why the Pilgrims came over from the Mayflower, why they did this. After this short advertisement. Skip. Haha. All righty, here we go.
The Pilgrim Fathers. There was a time when the people of England were not allowed to pray to God in the way they thought right, but were punished if they did not worship as the king ordered. This was very hard, and when James I was king, a little band of brave people, who found that they could not obey the king, left their country to make a new home across the sea, where they could be free. They are called the Pilgrim Fathers. 100 people, men, women, and children, set sail in a little ship called the Mayflower for the new world which a great explorer called Columbus had discovered away in the west, and which we now call America. They had a long and stormy voyage, but at last, in midwinter, they landed on the shores of North America and set up their huts. At first they had much trouble, for the ground was frozen and barren. They suffered from hunger and sickness, and the wild Indians who lived in that land came down upon them and tried to drive them away. But the Pilgrim Fathers did not lose courage. They were free, and they worked hard and waited in patience for brighter days. By and by other ships from England brought food to keep them alive, and more people to help them. Then they made friends with the Indians, and when spring came, they planted seeds and grew crops for themselves. After a time, many other Englishmen who wished to be free followed the Pilgrim Fathers and settled in America. They founded the colonies of New England, which are now a part of the United States.
Alrighty, so there's some brief short information from what we watched over yesterday. Are there any questions or comments so far about context clues or what we are going to investigate today? Questions or comments so far? Context clues or what we are investigating? Okay, awesome. We are going to investigate this by taking a look at our Scholastic news article. So if you're in my class on a school device, I'm going to send you the link, and remember to log in. You will select that you are a student, and you will click on your Google login, log in with Google. And if you are not in my class or on a student device, I've put the link in the chat. So when you click on the link, it will bring you to a page that says, what are you? And you want to log in. Click on that login, and you will click, I'm a student. I'm not a student, I'm a teacher. So I'm going to click, I'm a teacher. And then I'm going to click that login with Google right here, sign in with Google. And that will bring you up to your Scholastic account. Okay. Go ahead and get logged in, and while you do that, we will pause and wait. Alrighty, so we are reading the article, Could You Survive the Mayflower? And remember, this is coming with the context that we learned yesterday, that half of the people died either on the journey to the American lands, or once they got to the American lands and landed in a colder climate. Alrighty, let's read together. Imagine it's 1620. That is 400 years ago, kiddos. You're a pilgrim on the Mayflower in the Atlantic Ocean. A storm hits and huge waves slam into the ship. As the Mayflower rocks from side to side, you start to worry. Will you reach the Americas? A tough start. You've probably heard of the Mayflower and its famous passengers, the Pilgrims. But do you know how difficult their trip to America was? From storms at sea to horrible diseases, the Pilgrims faced many dangerous challenges. The first sign of trouble came early. The Pilgrims had planned to use 2 ships, but as they left England in August 1620, one ship sprang a leak. The Pilgrims were left with a single ship. Families had to decide who was going to stay back and who was going to the New World, says Vicki Oman, an expert on pilgrims. The Pilgrims were eager to start new lives and find religious freedom in America. So about 130 passengers and crew squeezed onto the remaining ship, along with goats, dogs, and chickens. The Mayflower sailed for America in September of 1620. So that is 400 years and 3 months ago. We're going to look here at inside the Mayflower to get a quick peek inside of the ship. This is a slideshow. Again, you can click on it on your screen or you can watch mine. Inside the Mayflower, click through the slideshow to peek inside the famous sailing ship. Inside the Mayflower, food was stored on board, like this dry cracker had a long time to last. So they would pack food that they knew wouldn't spoil and wouldn't go bad. So there weren't a lot of fresh vegetables and food and veggies. There wasn't a lot of meat that was packed. It was food that would last a long time. Next slide. Inside the Mayflower, 11 girls and 21 boys sailed from England. 2 babies were born on the ship. So that's 11 plus 21, that's 32 kids and 2 babies. So of the 132 that were on board, 32 were kids and 2 were babies. Yesterday we learned only 1 baby was born. Today we learned of another. Next slide. Inside the Mayflower, a stick-like device called a whipstaff was used to steer the ship. So there wasn't a steering wheel like you see inside of cars and buses, and there wasn't a rotary, what do we call that? A ship's steering wheel. I can't remember what that's called right now. There was a stick that they would use and that would control parts in the water that would turn to make the boat follow. Next slide. Inside the Mayflower, 12 cannons were on board to fight off pirates. Yes, the kind of pirates that you're thinking, that would come up and try to take over your ship and steal everything you had. So they had cannons, or very large guns, basically, to fight off pirates. Last slide. Inside the Mayflower, only the captain had his own space. Other people felt lucky if they had a bed. Some slept in hammocks or on the floor. So not a lot of space, because remember, there were supposed to be 2 ships and only 1 made it. All righty, go ahead and go back to your article. All righty, and we're going to go underneath that slideshow where it says months of misery. This is one of the context clue phrases that you're going to use today. So months of misery. We know what months are. Those are a way to measure time. We're going to figure out what misery means. Listen and think about what misery could mean. Life on the ship wasn't easy. Passengers were cooped up in a dark lower deck full of rats. Many of them got horribly seasick. Okay, not easy. There's rats and they're getting sick. I'm starting to think misery is not a good thing. People were throwing up all the time, which smelled terrible. says Omen. Oof. But passengers weren't allowed to get fresh air on the top deck because they might get swept overboard. Supplies of food and fresh water ran low. Without enough nutrients, some people got a serious disease called scurvy. Man, this is not sounding like a good time. Halfway through the voyage, a violent storm struck. As the ship got tossed about, passengers were thrown against walls. A large beam or wooden support cracked. So now there's cracks in the boat. Was it safe to continue on the damaged ship? The Pilgrims talked about turning back, but they fixed the beam and kept sailing. So when I'm thinking about that word misery, there were a lot of examples inside of here telling me what misery could mean. Rats, getting sick, people throwing up and having to smell it, no fresh air, food and water was low, people are getting diseases, there's a storm, the boat is broken and cracked. This is not sounding like a good time. Let's go on to our last section here, land at last. After 66 days at sea, that's a little more than 2 months, the Pilgrims finally reached the coast of what is now Massachusetts. Only 2 people, a sailor and a teenage boy, died on the trip to America. The Pilgrims built a village called Plymouth and made it through a tough first winter. They also planted crops. In 1621, that's 399 years ago, they celebrated the harvest with a 3-day feast. Today, we call that feast the first Thanksgiving. For the Pilgrims, reaching America meant a new life. But what do you think their arrival meant for Native Americans who already lived there? We've kind of spent some weeks talking about that and how it wasn't fair to the Native Americans. Down here, you'll see a map of the journey that they were supposed to take in blue. So we see they were supposed to land in Virginia, where the weather was warm. But that storm hit and took them off course right here, and their actual route landed them in New England or Massachusetts, which is why they landed in cold weather and weren't prepared. Okay. I'm going to send you to your breakout rooms, and I want for you to discuss what you think life was like on the Mayflower. So do you think you could have made it? Could you have survived? I'm going to send you to breakout rooms, and I want you to discuss, and we'll see if these breakout rooms work. Fingers crossed for us, right? Could you have survived on that Mayflower? Kicking out. All righty, what was life like on the Mayflower, and do you think that you could have survived? What do you think? Terrence?
No, because they had a lot of they didn't have a lot of food, and because I couldn't sleep on the ground or smell throw up.
So it would have been a difficult journey for you. You don't think you could have made it? All right, thanks for sharing. William, what about you, bud?
I think that I could have made it because I wouldn't get seasick, but it might stink, and also I wouldn't be able to smell puke because I can just breathe out my mouth.
Okay, so you have some strategies, but do you think it would still be difficult?
Maybe.
Maybe. I think it'd be a tough journey for sure. Christopher, what do you think, bub?
I think it would be easy because if anyone wants, I could as well breathe my mouth. And if there was a little hole that went through outside, I could have breathed through there the air.
Ooh,
So
getting resourceful. All right, so you'd find some fresh air. If you're not allowed to go up board, you're going to make it your own. I hope you don't put a hole where there's water, though. Dun, dun, dun. In the chat, Braden says it would be tough because how would you sleep when a ship is moving? Yeah, imagine your bed is just doing this all night. That'd be hard to sleep in, right? Your head's going up or you're turning and rolling over.
It won't if you're fully asleep.
Yeah, it could be maybe like rocking a baby, but man, I'd be nervous. Levin, what
And
about you, bud?
because
I would probably survive because I would just be sneaky in the middle of the night because the captain would still be sitting somewhere, probably midnight snacking on some crackers and just chill in his room all night and day.
But what happens if you went out on top of the ship and during that storm you got thrown into the sea?
No,
So that
I
was
would
a
be in the
risk.
captain's room.
Right, but how would you get there from underneath the ship? Because you had to stay in the bottom.
I would sneak out.
I hope you don't fall overboard, sir. I'd miss you. Aiden G, what are your thoughts? And then Terrence, you'll close us out.
so I would not like the church because it would stink in there, and you wouldn't have any fresh air or nothing to drink.
Yeah, they said that
You
the
only got
water was running
crackers.
low. Yeah, they said water was running low. Braden asked a great question. How would they take a shower? They didn't. There were no showers on that ship, and they weren't up top to get the rain on them. So for 2 months, they were in their stinky bodies. Ugh. Terrence, go ahead and close us out. What did you want to close with?
I couldn't stand it either because I couldn't survive 60 days with no food.
Well, they had food. It was just very little food. So they had like just enough to keep them alive. But yeah, that would be tough for sure. All right. So you are going to get the opportunity to tell me more about if you think you could survive or not. On Seesaw, you have an activity. So go ahead and go to your Seesaw activities, please. Your activity is called Context Clues. Could you survive the Mayflower? With your teacher, we've done everything except the last step. We've looked at our goal. We've reviewed context clues. We have read the article. Now we're going to complete one of the words and phrases together, okay? So we're going to add a response and we're going to do one slide together. You will complete the rest of this during your task completion today, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and click add response. You do the same. And again, if what I recommend is making your screen smaller like this, and then putting your zoom over on the other side that is your background so that you can see my screen and your screen at the same time. That's going to help you be able to complete your work with me. I'm going to leave my screen big since you're all trying to look at it. That'll make it easier to see. Okay. Alrighty, let's look at our instructions for you. It says review the article, Could You Survive the Mayflower? Use context clues to determine the meaning of words and phrases on slides 3 through 7. On slide 8, use the typing or recording tool to discuss if you could survive the Mayflower and explain why or why not. Reflect on how well you did on slide 9 and then you will submit your work. Okay. Slide 1 again has our goals. We are working on applying background knowledge to determine the meaning of unknown words and phrases. If you feel like you need some extra practice during independent work time, you can watch the context clues vocabulary, but we're not going to do that right now. Slide 2 is a link to the article. So if you need to get to the article, when we get off, you've got a link right here to get you right back there. Let's look at slide 3 together. This is that word that we were talking about, misery. Months of misery. Miss Sharp has given us a small clue here. Let's listen up to her clue.
Months of misery.
I apologize. She's going to read you the text again. That's not a clue. She will read you the text again if you feel like you need some help. So on each slide, if you need to hear the text, Miss Sharp has read it to you. We've read misery, so we're going to figure out what we think it means. Go ahead and grab your highlighting tool. Choose the color you'd like to highlight in. I know when we were talking about misery, they said life wasn't easy. That's a clue for me. Also, they said the deck was full of rats. I do not want to be around rats in my life. Another clue was they got horribly seasick. People were throwing up all the time, and it smelled terrible. Misery is not sounding like a good thing to me. It's sounding pretty miserable. It's sounding pretty awful, okay? Not enjoyable. So I have a lot of clues here. I think I know what this means. So in the text, I think that misery means awful. So months of awfulness. In the clues that helped me, there were quite a few clues. Life wasn't easy. There were rats. There was throw up, and people were sick. Those all sound like awful things to me. So those are the clues that helped me figure out what it means. Jared, as long as what you're putting makes sense and fits within the context, that is fine. So this is how you are going to complete your words and phrases on slides 4, 5, 6, and 7. You will highlight the parts of the text that gave you clues about what the word means. Okay, our word was misery. And then in misery, it was described that there was throw up, there were rats, people were getting sick, and they said life wasn't easy. To me, that sounds awful. So I think the word means awful. Okay. Questions on the assignment expectation on what you are going to do. I want to make sure we're good. Okay. Your instructions said on slides 3 through 7, this is what you're going to do. On slide 8, you are going to tell me by typing or by recording if you could survive the Mayflower. Why or why not? So do you think you could survive? And then you will rate yourself on your goal of applying background knowledge. How do you think you did on those today? All righty. That is your assignment for the day.